Yeah, so I said I would try bowling, but I didn't mean I would actually try bowling. Um, I think the problem is the bowling balls are heavy, and I know they got the different sizes and the colors. I don't know if the colors means different weight or you got to get measured first. I know shoes are involved in footwear, and um, that's a lot of stuff to be honest. And I don't necessarily want to go do all of it. Steve Weiner here from GetRubix.com, and today we're going to keep going with our Cloud Native series. It's part 3, I think, and well, we're just going to keep going. Um, yeah, no, definitely. That's going to be a no for bowling. Let's leave it at that. Okay, so today we're going to back all the way up. Oh, I messed something up there. I'm still getting the hang of this whiteboard app. I see now why a lot of these devices have touch screens and you want to be able to write on them, but let's do this. We were able to check off group policy. Okay, we talked about that. That was yesterday. Obviously, we're gonna in the future go into more technical details, but I think today the big one is going to be so today is going to be all about access for a cloud joined machine. Okay, so when we talk about access, what do we actually mean? So we're talking about a domain, which is where you have your stuff. And when you bring Entra into the picture and the PC is just out over the internet hanging around, it's not on the domain, how do you get to your stuff? So there's two pieces we have to address. I guess I forgot the computer. Okay, here it is. How does the computer access your stuff on the domain? Actually, what is this stuff? All right, so the stuff is probably more specific here. Okay, well, that's a little better. File shares, printers, applications, and of course, more stuff, because there's always more stuff. So the first question is logistical. How do we access the stuff? Well, this is the same as it exists today. If you're outside the domain, right, and you're trying to get here, you need some kind of VPN connection, right? You need line of sight to the domain. That's either going to be VPN or you're literally going to put the computer on the domain. You're going to be in the building, have network access, be on premise, right? So those are the two options. So line of sight doesn't change. This is the same as if you're joined to the cloud or if you're on-prem. One way or another, you're either going to be outside or inside. So we can kind of just leave that alone and ignore that topic. When the PC is joined to Entra and not joined to the domain, we have to talk about authentication. How do we authenticate? So when you have a PC that is domain joined, it's important to understand that, let's move this aside, there's a record of it on premise. So if that means if you have a PC that's named PC123ABC, don't go stealing that now, that's a good idea. You are going to have a corresponding record in the domain for PC123ABC. Okay. Same thing when you sign in as a user, you're signing in as domain/John user. And of course, John user also exists on the domain. So that means whenever you're trying to ping something on the domain, whether it's a file share, printer, and apps, you're let in because you're part of that network, right? You are domain/PC, right? Domain/PC, and you're accessing apps and printers and file shares. So there's really no problem. It's the whole point we put things on a domain so we can control them. That's the point. It's like our little castle. But now when the PC is joined to Entra, and let's just call this what it is. This is a Entra join PC, also known as, you guessed it, Cloud Native. Entra certainly knows about PC because it's joined to Entra, but the domain has no idea that it's there. The key thing I think most folks miss when we talk about a cloud native PC is we're saying it's a cloud native PC. We're not saying to get rid of Active Directory. In fact, your Active Directory domain is going to be there for the foreseeable future. It's the user that exists in both places. So like, where's my glue? What am I missing here, right? Between these two things. So I'm missing the idea of the user. Okay, so this is a user. Today, most of us are in a hybrid environment because of Office 365. So what the hybrid environment means is if your domain's down here, you have this piece that is Entra Connect, also known as Azure AD Connect or AD Connect. What this is doing is this is responsible for syncing these two things. So let's make that like an orange. It's syncing the identity. So domain John user is up here going to exist as the email sign-in, John user at domain.net or whatever, doesn't matter. Because, you know, up here, this is where John signs into all his web apps for Microsoft, mostly Office, you know, Word, PowerPoint, all that stuff, OneDrive, and that's how that works. So the user, domain John user, exists up here. So this is very important, this idea of the Entra AD Connect, because that's what binds these things together. Now you bring the PC into the picture. Now you bring a cloud PC into the picture, right? And the cloud PC is joined here by John signing in, right? So John signs in to the PC, and that's what allows him to Entra join or cloud join, right? So he's doing that with his, you know, cloud ID. But the thing to remember is when John does this, when he does the join, so here, let's just put that there. There's something very specific about Entra join, and that's called a primary refresh token. Now, what does that mean? That means if the user originated from here, okay, so that means if I start here and I am synced up here, and when I go to join here with that same user, right, these are the same. I'm really just a bad artist. So when I sign in with that user, I get what's called a refresh token, a primary refresh token. Primary refresh token. All right, who cares about the primary refresh token? What does it do? Well, let's talk about what's inside of the primary refresh token. Okay, so the primary refresh token contains some information. And you've probably seen this if you've ever run the dsreg command status on a hybrid or Entra join device. What you're actually going to get is you're going to get the token issued to John user at domain.net. You're also going to get this, John user short name, right? Just like up there. Now, why is that? That's because you're syncing the identity. So when you're logged in, so even though you're logged into a cloud PC only, the PC has knowledge of the domain. It knows about it. It's not a stranger, right? So when it goes to authenticate to something, let's take a file share, for example, right? If I'm on-prem, if I VPN in, however I can establish that line of sight, okay? Even though the PC doesn't exist down there, the user does. So the user exists. So when I authenticate back to the domain, you know, the PC says, hey, you don't know me as a PC, but I'm domain /John user. So I have access to this file share. It doesn't matter if I'm not on an Entra, you know, if I'm not on a domain join PC versus an Entra join. That's the point of the primary refresh token. It gives the device that knowledge to come in with, right? So it kind of just passes it through. Now that means, depending on the domain, right, and depending on what you're trying to access, like a file share or possibly, you know, an application, let's say, you know, you're going to have to make sure you're passing that through. So you could be prompted to enter that information. Now, let's say you make the move to Entra join and you want to use something like Windows Hello for Business or something modern or go passwordless. Well, you can do that by configuring what's called Entra Cloud Trust through Entra Connect on the domain. So what that would do is Cloud Trust basically tells the domain, if I'm using, you know, Windows Hello, which is I guess it's just a face. There you go. We'll call that Windows Hello. maybe they'll adopt it as a new thing. So if I'm using Windows Hello for Business, and I update my on-prem domain with Cloud Trust as an authentication model with AD Connect, it'll say, hey, listen, I can understand that. You know, I know who domain John User is, and he's also John User at domain.net, and I understand the type of authentication you're passing through. So now you can seamlessly sign in to on-premise resources, and it won't matter. Right? I think the takeaway here is if you take a look at how much emphasis we're putting on the user, think about how you permission folks to access certain things today, like file shares and applications or maybe network printers. It's generally done by the user group. So as long as you're syncing your identities to, Entra, which most folks have been doing for a long time now, you're going to be okay one way or another. So yeah, this is probably one of the most common misconceptions that's out there about going cloud native, that you will lose all ties to your on-premise resources. And it's just not the case, right? Even before the Cloud Trust and Windows Hello for Business, you could still do it. Worst is you may be prompted for a password, so it's not as seamless. But and I'm talking about when it started, as the technology matured and as the platform matured, this became less and less of an issue. So if you're using Entra Connect, if you have SSO set up between the domain and Entra, you're not going to have a problem taking a cloud joined PC and accessing an on-prem resource, because it's the user that's accessing it, and that user still exists on the domain. All right, we got one more to tackle within this whiteboard. We're going to do that next time, and feel free to pop in the Discord and let me know how it's going. Until then, we'll be seeing you. 5, 4, 3